My sister blocked me from entering the hotel, saying, "This is the Grand Azure, Ellie. You can't afford it." I pulled out my key card to the hotel I actually owned and said, "Actually, I think I'll stay." The blood rushed to my fingertips as I held that plastic card, watching Vanessa plant herself more firmly in the doorway like some kind of designer-dressed bouncer. My father's booming laughter echoed from inside the grand lobby, the lobby I had personally designed with marble I'd selected and chandeliers I'd commissioned. Here I was standing outside my own hotel like an unwanted solicitor. "You can't seriously think you're coming in," Vanessa continued, her voice dropping to that condescending whisper she'd perfected over the years. She adjusted her dress, which I immediately recognized as a knockoff of a design my friend had shown me just last week. "This is the Grand Azure, Ellie. The tasting menu alone costs more than you make in a month." If she only knew I'd personally created that menu with our Michelin-starred chef. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so insulting. "He's my father, too," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The small envelope in my clutch suddenly felt heavy. Inside was the deed to a vacation villa in Tuscany, one of my most exclusive properties. "My name is Eleanor, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 38 years old and the founder of Azure Hospitality Group. What my family doesn't know is that their failure daughter owns a hotel empire worth over $2.3 billion. This is the story of how I finally stopped hiding my success to spare their feelings." "Mom and Dad were very specific," Vanessa continued, checking her reflection in the glass doors. "They only want successful people here, people who won't embarrass the family." She paused, looking me up and down with obvious disdain. What would people think if they knew Dad's failure of a daughter was serving their drinks? The analytical part of my mind, the part that had built a hospitality empire from nothing, started calculating the delicious irony of this moment. Just yesterday, I'd signed off on a $100 million expansion of the Grand Azure chain. Today, I was apparently too embarrassing to enter my own flagship property. 10 years ago, when I decided to leave the family's struggling accounting firm to pursue hospitality management, they'd practically disowned me. My father's words still echoed in my memory. "No daughter of mine is going to be a glorified waitress." So I'd let them think exactly that. Let them believe I was struggling in restaurant management while I quietly built Azure Hospitality Group into one of the most successful luxury hotel chains in the world. The glorified waitress now owned 35 five-star hotels across 3 continents, with another 12 properties in development. My personal net worth exceeded the GDP of small countries, but my family still saw me as their charity case. My mother's sharp voice cut through my thoughts as she appeared behind Vanessa. "Eleanor, what are you doing here? We discussed this." No, they had discussed it. I'd received a text message this morning. "Don't come to Dad's birthday. It's at the Grand Azure. You can't afford it. Don't embarrass us." "I brought a gift," I said quietly, holding up the envelope. "Oh, what is it? A gift card to Olive Garden?" Vanessa laughed. "Or did you scrape together enough tips to buy him something from the mall?" My mother's eyes narrowed at my simple clutch bag, a handmade Italian leather piece that cost more than Vanessa's car. "Whatever it is, I'm sure your sister's gift is more appropriate. She just made junior partner at her firm, you know." I knew. Just like I knew her firm was currently in negotiations to lease office space in one of my buildings. The lease they desperately needed but couldn't quite afford. My real estate division had sent me the reports just yesterday. They were 3 months behind on rent at their current location and facing eviction. "Vanessa's doing so well," Mom continued, warming to her favorite topic. "New house in the suburbs, luxury car, wonderful fiancé with such good prospects." She paused, giving me a critical once-over. "And you? Well, at least you're trying, I suppose." I thought about my penthouse overlooking Central Park, my collection of rare sports cars, the private jet I'd flown in on this morning from a board meeting in Monaco. Yes, Mom. At least I'm trying. Speaking of trying, Vanessa smirked, that dress. Couldn't you have made an effort? This is the Grand Azure, not some diner. I ran my hand over the sophisticated black silk, custom made by one of Paris's most exclusive designers, the same designer who had refused to make anything for Vanessa last month, a detail my stylist had mentioned during our last fitting. It's what I could manage, I said mildly. What they didn't know was that this simple black dress had cost $30,000, more than most people made in a year. But I'd learned long ago that true luxury whispers where cheap imitations shout. Well, you can't come in, Vanessa declared. We've reserved the entire VIP floor. It's for family and distinguished guests only. The VIP floor, my VIP floor, the one I'd personally redesigned last year, selecting every piece of artwork and every crystal chandelier. I knew every square inch of this hotel because I'd been involved in every major decision since purchasing the property 7 years ago. The distinguished guests being? I asked, genuinely curious about who they'd invited to my hotel. Oh, you wouldn't know them, my mother waved dismissively. The Blackwoods, old money, you know, and Mr. Harrison from First National Bank, all very important people. I suppressed a smile. The Blackwoods had recently begged for a membership at my most exclusive resort in the Hamptons, which I'd personally denied after learning about their reputation for stiffing service staff. And Mr. Harrison. His bank was currently seeking a major loan from my investment group to avoid bankruptcy. My entire family's guest list was either my tenant, my debtor, or my supplicant. The irony was almost too perfect. Right, I said. Very important people. Exactly, Vanessa said, clearly pleased I understood my place. So you see why you can't be here. What would people think if they knew Dad's failure of a daughter was serving their drinks? Just then my brother-in-law Gavin appeared, straightening his tie. What's taking so long? Everyone's waiting for... He spotted me and his face dropped. Eleanor, didn't expect to see you here. Clearly not, I replied. Gavin just made vice president at his bank, my mother announced proudly. Junior vice president, I corrected automatically, knowing his exact position because his bank handled some of my smaller accounts. My financial team provided detailed reports on all banking partners, and Gavin's bank was struggling. In fact, the board meeting I'd left early this morning had discussed acquiring his failing institution. Well, it's more impressive than whatever you're doing, Vanessa snapped. What is it now? Assistant manager at some chain restaurant? I thought about the acquisition paperwork probably sitting on my desk upstairs in my private office. Something like that. The truth was, I maintained detailed intelligence on everyone in my family's professional circle. It wasn't malicious, it was simply good business practice. When you own as many properties and businesses as I do, you naturally encounter the same people your family thinks are so impressive. The difference is, they come to me hat in hand, seeking loans, leases, and favors. Gavin's bank was hemorrhaging money due to bad investments in commercial real estate. Vanessa's law firm was facing bankruptcy after losing their biggest client in a malpractice suit. My parents' accounting business had been struggling for years, surviving only because they operated out of one of my buildings at below-market rent, a favor they didn't even know I was providing through a shell company. This is ridiculous, my mother declared. Eleanor, just go. You're making a scene. I'll tell your father you couldn't make it, couldn't afford it. You mean, couldn't afford it, Vanessa added with a laugh. I looked past them through the grand entrance at the hotel I'd built from the ground up. Every marble tile, every piece of art, every carefully curated detail. It was all mine. For a moment, I considered walking away. Let them have their party in my hotel. Let them continue believing what they wanted to believe. But then I remembered something my first mentor had told me when I was starting out. Success doesn't mean anything if you can't stand up for yourself when it matters. My jaw tightened as I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of everything I'd built without their support or approval. My fingers stopped tingling as calm clarity washed over me. I'd spent too many years hiding my success to spare their pride, enabling their delusions about my failure while they mocked me at every family gathering. That ended tonight. Before my mother could respond to my statement about staying, the heavy glass doors swung open and Owen stepped out. He'd been my head of security since I bought my first struggling hotel 7 years ago, helping me transform it into the flagship of the Azure chain. He was ex-military, completely professional, and absolutely loyal. "Is everything all right here, Ms. Hayes?" His voice carried clearly across the entrance, my name dropping like a bomb in the middle of their conversation. "Your usual table is ready, and Chef Michelle is holding the menu tasting for your approval." The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's mouth fell open, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly garish against her pale face. My mother gripped the brass door handle for support, her knuckles turning white. "Owen," I smiled warmly. "Perfect timing. My family was just explaining how I couldn't afford to dine here." "Ma'am?" He looked genuinely confused, his professional demeanor slipping for just a moment. "But you own the entire hotel chain. This is your flagship property." "Yes, I do." I turned to my stunned family with a smile that had closed billion-dollar deals. "Shall we go inside? I believe you've reserved the VIP floor. My VIP floor, to be precise." Gavin found his voice first, though it came out as barely a whisper. This is some kind of joke. You're just a restaurant manager." "Actually," Owen interjected with military precision, "Ms. Hayes is the founder and CEO of Azure Hospitality Group. She owns all 35 Grand Azure hotels worldwide, along with our resort properties and restaurant chains. The company is valued at approximately $2.3 billion. Vanessa's designer clutch slipped from her fingers, clattering on the marble steps. But that's impossible. The Grand Azure is worth billions." "Which makes your comment about me not being able to afford the tasting menu rather amusing," I finished for her, stepping past them into my hotel's lobby. The moment I entered, the entire staff straightened to attention. This wasn't the nervous deference they showed to difficult guests. This was the genuine respect I'd earned through 7 years of hands-on leadership, fair treatment, and generous profit-sharing programs. "Good evening, Ms. Hayes," my front desk manager Rachel called out. "The executive suite is prepared for your father's birthday celebration, and the kitchen has prepared the special menu you requested." "Thank you, Rachel." I turned back to my family, still frozen in the doorway like deer in headlights. "Coming?" They followed me in stunned silence, looking around as if seeing the hotel for the first time. Every staff member we passed greeted me by name, each interaction demonstrating the respect and warmth that comes from being a leader who actually cares about her employees. "But your dress," my mother finally managed, staring at my simple black silk with new understanding. "Custom made in Paris," I replied casually. "Around 30,000, I believe. I have a terrible habit of not checking price tags anymore." I led them to the private elevator, the one that required a special key I pulled from my clutch. Unlike Vanessa's dress, which I believe is a knockoff, the real Valentino collection hasn't been released yet. I know because I attended the private showing last month. The elevator doors opened directly into the VIP lounge, where my father's birthday celebration was in full swing. The room fell silent as we entered, 75 guests turning to stare at the family drama unfolding before them. "Eleanor." My father stood up from his place at the head table, his face a mix of shock and confusion. "What are you doing here? Your mother said you couldn't afford it." "Happy birthday, Dad." I walked over to him with complete composure. "I hope you don't mind that I'm crashing the party in my own hotel." "Your hotel?" Mr. Harrison from First National Bank stepped forward, his face breaking into a relieved smile. "Ms. Hayes, I had no idea you were related to Robert Hayes. We've been trying to secure a meeting with you for months about that loan application." "Eleanor owns the Grand Azure?" Mrs. Blackwood joined the conversation, looking between me and my father in amazement. "My God, Robert. Your daughter is the mysterious CEO who's been buying up prime real estate across the city. We've been trying to get that resort membership for years." My father sank back into his chair, the color draining from his face. "All this time, when we thought you were just a glorified waitress." "Your words," I said with a slight smile, "from the day I left the family firm to pursue my dreams in hospitality." "But why didn't you tell us?" my mother demanded, still clutching her pearls like a lifeline. "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "You didn't believe in me 10 years ago when I needed your support. Why would I share my success with people who only measure worth by the size of someone's bank account?" I paused, looking around the room at the stunned faces. Though, by that metric, I suppose I'm worth more than everyone in this room combined. The truth was even more devastating than they realized. Not only did I own this hotel, but I had significant business relationships with most of their distinguished guests. The Blackwoods owed me money from a failed resort investment. Harrison's bank was essentially bankrupt without the loan they were seeking from my investment group. I owned the building where my parents' accounting firm operated. I held the mortgage on Vanessa's suburban house through one of my real estate subsidiaries. Gavin's bank was about to be acquired by my financial group, making me essentially his boss. They'd spent years mocking me as a failure, while unknowingly depending on my financial empire for their livelihoods. Vanessa collapsed into a nearby chair, her face ashen. "The villa in the south of France I tried to rent last summer. The one that was mysteriously unavailable." "Mine," I confirmed. "My property manager forwarded me your reservation request, not realizing the family connection. I decided to keep it closed that week for maintenance." I glanced at Gavin, whose face had gone from pale to gray. "Just like the office building your firm is struggling to lease, Gavin. And the resort membership you've been waitlisted for, Mother." The room was dead silent now, every guest hanging on every word. This wasn't just a family reunion, it was a masterclass in power dynamics playing out in real time. "Eleanor," my father started, his voice unsteady. We save it." I held up my hand. "I didn't reveal this to hurt you, though you've hurt me plenty over the years. I did it because I'm tired of hiding my success to spare your pride." I turned to address the room, every inch the CEO who commanded boardrooms around the world. "Please, everyone, enjoy the party. Everything is on the house, my house." I started to walk away, then paused for the coup de grace. "Oh, and Dad, that envelope Vanessa wouldn't let me give you. It's the deed to a villa in Tuscany, one of my most exclusive properties. Consider it a birthday gift from your failure of a daughter." The next hour was surreal. People who had ignored me at previous family gatherings suddenly wanted to discuss business opportunities. Mrs. Blackwood practically begged for that resort membership she'd been denied. Mr. Harrison cornered me about his bank's loan application, suddenly desperate to curry favor. Meanwhile, my family sat in stunned silence, watching their carefully constructed narrative crumble in real time. Vanessa's fiancé quietly disappeared after learning that his future wife's guaranteed partnership at her firm was dependent on a lease she couldn't afford in my building. Gavin kept making phone calls, presumably updating his resume now that he knew his boss's boss's boss was his despised sister-in-law. My mother alternated between crying and trying to explain to other guests that she'd always believed in her daughter's potential. A revision of history so blatant that several family friends looked physically uncomfortable. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. These people had built their entire sense of superiority on the belief that they were successful while I was a failure. learning that not only was I more successful than all of them combined, but that I actually controlled many aspects of their professional lives, shattered their worldview completely. As the evening wound down, I found my father alone on the terrace overlooking the city lights. "Those buildings," he pointed to the skyline with a shaking hand. "How many do you own?" "Enough," I replied, standing beside him, "including the one where your firm operates, though you've never known it." He nodded slowly, the full scope of the situation finally sinking in. "I was wrong about you, Eleanor. So terribly wrong." "Yes," I agreed without emotion. "You were. Can you ever forgive us?" I considered his question, thinking about all the years of dismissal and condescension, all the family gatherings where I'd been treated as the charity case, all the times they'd made it clear I was a disappointment. "Forgiveness isn't the issue, Dad. Respect is. You never respected my choices or believed in my abilities. You only respect success after it's undeniably proven." I smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "And now? Now you can tell people your daughter owns the Grand Azure. That should satisfy your need for impressive dinner party conversation." I left him there and headed to my private office on the top floor. Tomorrow, the family dynamic would shift dramatically. Vanessa would no longer be the golden child, not when her sister owned a hotel empire. My mother would frantically rewrite history to claim she'd always supported me. Gavin's bank would face acquisition, making me his ultimate employer. But tonight, I'd finally taken my seat at the table. Not just any table. The table I'd built myself in a room I owned, under a roof I'd paid for. And that was worth more than any amount of belated family approval. The real victory wasn't in their shock or their sudden desperate attempts to curry favor. It was in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that after 10 years of letting them believe I was a failure, I'd revealed myself to be more successful than they'd ever dared to dream of becoming. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about proving yourself to people who never believed in you. It was about building something so undeniably impressive that their opinions became irrelevant. And sometimes, when they push you too far, it's about reminding them exactly who they're dealing with.